Good evening.
Where's Michael?
He is here.
He's right there.
Thank you all for being here this evening. I will ask the treasurer to call the roll.
President Baker,
Present.
Mr. Cole. Present. Ms. Gibbs,
Here.
Ms. Hudson,
Yeah, here.
Mr. Peretti,
Here.
Ms. Reyes,
Here.
Vice President Stewart. You have a quorum, Mr. President?
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask, if she doesn't mind, Miss Alice Pager to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. And before we go on, I would like to, as a point of privilege, welcome Ms. Reyes back and congratulate her on her nuptials, as well as her new position as director at the Guadalupe Center. Congratulations. And having said that, I will entertain a motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Treasurer?
President Baker,
Yes.
Mr. Cole,
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs.
Yes.
Ms. Hudson,
Yes.
Mr. Peretti,
Yes.
Ms. Reyes.
Yes.
That motion carried.
Thank you very much. Now that it's been approved, let me just quickly read through the agenda so everybody knows the work we have before us this evening. We do have someone here for public comment, so we'll take that first. We then will hear from the superintendent with his report, after which we will hear from the treasurer with his report. We have 2 resolutions under board matters that we will take up individually, after which we will contemplate our consent agenda. After that, we will have announcements. We will discuss any points of pride that board members would like to share tonight. We will then adjourn into executive session. We will adjourn for the night from executive session without returning to this chamber. So that is what we have before us. And at this point, I would like to take public comment, and I'd like to invite Mr. George Walker to the podium. Now, Mr. Walker was here at the last meeting, but we outlasted him. Unfortunately, he had to leave for another engagement. So I want to welcome you. Your topic is you want to thank the board for all it has done for the Linden schools and talk about schools geared towards Linden McKinley. Good evening. You have 4 minutes.
Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Stewart, Treasurer Beharick, Internal Auditor Smith, and members of the board. Superintendent Good. I'm going to say it's a privilege for me to be standing here today. My friends, and it's many of you that's here that I'm happy that you're a part of the board. I would like to, and I know you wasn't supposed to give anything towards special people, but there's a gentleman by the name of David Baker that has been coming out and working with the schools in Linden, that we have some of the finest principals in the city of Columbus. The principals have really taken interest in our children in Linden, and we're starting to educate our kids in Linden. I originally came down to say we needed some work for the buildings, but I'm gonna stand here today and kind of eat crow a little bit and say that the buildings are being taken care of. We had a fire about 4 weeks ago at Linden STEM Academy, and I'm gonna say that the maintenance department came out. They took care of the situation just like it was one of their own children. And I mean, that playground, you can't even tell that it actually happened. And I'm gonna thank the board because when it happened, there was board members swarming to make sure that things happen at the school. And the board members know who they are. because I guess I wasn't supposed to point board members out. But again, normally in Linden, we come down to not say too many good things to the board, but this is a day that I want to say that we are coming here to express our appreciation for the board and for Dr. Good of all the good things that you have been doing. So I won't take too much more of your time, and that's what I came down to say. This is unusual for me to not have a long and drawn-out agenda, but today it's a short one. I just want to come and thank you.
Mr. Walker, thank you very much, and thank you for all of your service to the community. It's very much appreciated. Are there any clarifying questions from board members? All right, so we hope to see you back again sometime soon. Oh.
I do want to say one thing. I do like that you can, and a lot of the board members, they call themselves shopping in the Linden area, and I get a chance to pull up right behind them and say, hey, this is what's going on in Linden today. And they turn around and said, well, Mr. Walker, it'll be okay. And my granddaughter wants to thank the board. I want you to say that because when that fire did start it, and she walked out of she got out the car and I walked inside the classroom, she looked up at me and said, Papa, what about recess? Mm-hmm. If it was my own children, I'd have told them, wait, you need to pay attention to your books. But looking at my granddaughter, I said, wow, we're going to have to make sure we get this straightened out today. And again, she is happy. I tell you, it looks brand new. That's all I can say, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walker. Look forward to seeing you again sometime soon.
Yes.
Do you have a comment? Yes, Ms.
and
Gibbs.
again, I'd just like to echo the sentiments of the community. Thank you for your committed service. We rushed there, Ms. Board Member Cole, I know rushed over there, but you were already there, asking the community to stand up, and if they know something, to say something about who damaged that property. And we appreciate your leadership in helping people understand that that is not our vision for the Linden community, and you being the committed leader in that community to make sure those schools in that community stand strong. So thank you for all of your years of effort.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Good night. All right, and now I would like to call on the superintendent to provide his report.
Thank you, President Baker, members of the board. We all share in a dedicated belief that every one of our students should have the greatest opportunities to succeed, and that's been part of our spirit of success this year. With your support, our team is working to make sure those opportunities of success are everywhere that our students might visit, with everyone they meet at every hour of the day and for their entire lives. So tonight I'd like to begin with one of our students who represented that spirit of success when her learning opportunities took her to the prestigious Conserve School in Wisconsin, a place recognized for its focus on environmental stewardship. Let me invite Leslie Kelly, our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, to introduce you to Alice Pejor, a senior at Whetstone High School. And she was the first student in Central Ohio and only the third student in all of the state to receive this incredible honor. Leslie?
Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Stewart, Treasurer Bohorak, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and Dr. Good. Our credit flex and education options policies allow students to explore individual interests and their passions. Tonight's presentation is an illustration of the positive power of these policies. And it is my pleasure to introduce Alice Pejor, an honors student at Whetstone High School. And I would like to welcome Alice to the podium to share her story with us.
Thank you, Mrs. Kelly. President Baker, Vice President Stewart, members of the board, Dr. Good, thank you for the opportunity to share my journey with you here today. I first heard about Conserve School from my aunt, whose friend's daughter went there. When my aunt discovered Conserve School, she immediately emailed me about it, and I checked out the website. I thought it sounded amazing, but I didn't think I'd ever be able to go there. So I put it off for about a year and a half. And after thinking about it for all that time, I came back to it one day and decided why not go for it. So I did, and I got in. Once I had been accepted, I had to work with Mrs. Kelly, my parents, the staff of Conserve School and Whetstone High School, and with a bit of guidance from the Office of Accountability, my trip was made possible. Once everything was in order, I packed up the car, said goodbye to my friends, and took the 12-hour car ride to Conserve School. At Conserve School, it's all about hands-on learning. In my science class, we spent almost 3 out of 5 days each week outside learning what it's like to be a field biologist. One of my favorite experiences was studying snowflakes under the microscope. We even got to learn about the first person who ever did that. It was awesome. In field instruction, or as we call it here, gym, we learned all sorts of new things. I learned how to cross-country ski, how to snowshoe, how to climb a rock wall, and in this picture I'm learning how to dig a cat hole, which is how you use the bathroom when you're camping. They also made sure that every person at Conserve School knew how to put up a tent before we ever went on our first camping trip. In my photography class, we spent the majority of the semester learning how to use our camera and how to set up the perfect picture. Towards the end of the semester, we got to reflect on what we had done throughout the entire time and write a personal artist statement and choose 3 of our best pictures and set up our own displays for everyone at Conserve School to see and our parents to see once they came to pick us up. In Stewardship in Action, at the beginning of the semester, every student got to pick which program they would like to participate in, and I chose beekeeping. We spent the first few weeks researching what it's like to keep bees and then actually building the hives. Towards the end of the semester, once the snow melted, we got to actually hive a few colonies of bees. In my history class, we spent nearly every single day outside, whether we were hiking through the snow, learning while our teacher was teaching us about the history of the Northwoods, or sitting down and listening to him tell us about what logging really is. We were always outside. Towards the end of the semester, we also got to build our own dugout canoe, and at the very last day, we got to take them out into one of the lakes and go swimming. On the weekends, we had plenty of free time, but we also had various volunteer opportunities. One of my favorite trips was when we went into the town of Land O'Lakes and got to help volunteer at a dog sled race. While there, we were either helping the dog sled racers with their dogs or passing out hot chocolate. Another favorite trip of mine was a fish hatchery. A group of students got to assist an elderly couple at their fish hatchery and do things I'd never expected doing, like weeding a pond. While I was there, the staff of the Conserve School invited and encouraged all the students to share their hidden talents. Several of the students were very good at yoga and held almost weekly classes teaching us the basics. I also learned how to play the ukulele while I was there, and I've continued to play it to this day. The staff had hidden talents too, and shared them with us as much as they could. One of the teachers taught me how to make bagels. And on Earth Day, we got the whole day off and took many workshops. I learned how to make cheese. We got to conjure dance, which is what this picture is, and many other cool things. About midway through the semester, we had the opportunity to go into the woods for 3 days and reflect, read, write, and put all of the things we had learned in field instruction up to this point to use. At the end of the semester, in each class we took a small exam and then got to choose between canoeing or backpacking and spend a week in the Sylvanian wilderness doing what we chose. Attending Conserve School really allowed me to step out of my comfort zone. My experience gave me the courage to acknowledge my goals, no matter how unachievable they may seem, and to strive for them. I would like to thank the staff of Conserve School and Whetstone High School, Mrs. Kelly, Dr. Klein, and most importantly, my parents, for making my experience at Conserve School possible. Thank you for your attention, and I will now gladly answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pager. Any board members have questions or comments on the presentation? Mr. Cole?
Thank you so much for this presentation. I'm excited at the fact that you had the opportunity to enjoy such a prestigious opportunity. How do you think this informs you as someone emerging into young adulthood and to a possible career? Is this something that you think you want to do? And is this something that you think we should encourage as curriculum throughout the district?
Yes, I definitely think that things like this should be encouraged, and attending the school actually gave me an idea of what I want to do when I grow up. Before I went there, I just thought maybe environmental science, but it opened the doors to loads of opportunities, and now I realize I want to go into wildlife, fish, and conservation.
Study Lake Erie?
Not
Clean up
quite,
Buckeye
but-
Lake?
Any other questions or comments from board members? Ms. Hudson?
President Baker, thank you so much. It sounds like a great, great opportunity and experience. So, so tell us, this is one way to pay it forward. How would you suggest, with the policy that we have, how have you been able to share this experience with your fellow students? And are you encouraging other students to look into going? How do you pay it forward?
I've definitely encouraged a lot of other people. My friends kind of hate hearing me talk about it because I tell them about it all the time. But anyone who ever asks about it, I tell them that it's an incredible experience. And I would like for more students to have the same opportunity as me. I don't know how we could make that possible, but I think it's an incredible experience.
All right, Ms. Gibbs?
So what's next?
I've actually been touring a lot of colleges lately, and I'm hoping to get out of state, but if I don't, it's not the end of the world. But I want to be an animal rehabilitator and like help animals.
Awesome.
Yes, Mr. Peretti?
Could you explain maybe a little bit about the continuity courses? I think that, sometimes maybe families may be apprehensive for things like this, but there are still those basics still going on. Maybe you could maybe talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't really talk about my English class, but we wrote several essays, so we were like enhancing our writing skills. And I did have a math class, which wasn't my favorite because it's math. But we actually used ALEX, which I believe we're incorporating that program into our schools now. So I got to use ALEX the whole year, and I passed pre-calculus. But so you continue learning what you need to.
Other questions or comments from board members? Yes, Ms. Reyes?
So how do you feel is the best way to let other students know that this opportunity is out there? Because we have a lot of programs, and, your excitement is throughout the room here, but how do you think we would do a better job of letting students know that this opportunity exists and they should take advantage of it?
I think maybe just including it on like a website or just telling students about it. I don't know if we ever have that opportunity in classes, but I had no idea about this school. And if I hadn't found out from my aunt, I would have had no idea. So I mean, I'd be willing to talk to some students about it if that needs to happen.
Other questions or comments? All right, then we wish you all the very best in all of your future endeavors, obviously, and I'd like to ask you to come up to the table, and I'd like to present you with a lapel pin because you are now officially an ambassador of the district. And let me acknowledge Alice's parents. Would you please stand and be acknowledged? Yes. We always say that a student's parents are her first and best teachers, and so you've done a wonderful job in raising an outstanding young lady. Congratulations. All right, Mr. Superintendent, have you anything else to share with the board?
Thank you, and thank you, Alice Pager, for your presentation. I also want to recognize her principal, Janet Rotsong, is here, and also Dr. Michelle Klein, who was instrumental in helping to construct that Credit Flex application. Thanks to all of you for supporting her and really representing the spirit of Columbus City Schools. It's really that same spirit that we are excited at the opportunity to offer more of our city's youngest students a head start on learning. As I mentioned briefly at our last meeting, our pre-kindergarten program just earned a new early childhood education expansion grant from the Ohio Department of Education. The grant from the state totals $768,000, and because of our partnership with the City of Columbus and Columbus City Council and the dedication of our Mayor Michael B. Coleman, and the Director of Education, Rhonda Johnson, to my right, this grant will allow us to offer full-day preschool to nearly 200 additional students this year. So, yes. That's 200 more 4-year-olds that will have access to a high-quality program that will increase their chances of succeeding in school and in life. And this new investment will put us closer to that community goal of giving every child in our city a head start on learning. On Thursday of this week, we will join our city partners in celebrating this collaboration. Our city collaboration also took center stage earlier today as we celebrated education beyond the traditional classroom and beyond who we think of as our students. Today was the inaugural open house for the Marion Franklin Opportunity Center, formerly our Beery Middle School. And I appreciate Board Member Ramona Reyes was able to join us. We had representatives of Columbus City Council, the Ohio House of Representatives, and the U.S. Senate, all recognizing the center and our collaboration with the Marion Franklin Civic Association as a model of success for transforming a former site into a community hub of adult education, job training, and family support. And through our adult and community education initiative, more than 100 people now have learned basic computer skills, brushed up resumes, prepared to take the GED, learn new English skills. We've also offered training for jobs in the healthcare industry through our state-tested nursing aid program. On the horizon, we'll be offering programs in HVAC and CDL, that's heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, and commercial driver's license, which one day may help us fill those sorely needed bus driver vacancies we have in the district. So tonight, versus me telling you more about it, I'd like to invite two individuals to the podium. First, I'd like for Robert Patterson, who's really been the inspiration behind this effort, to come to the podium. And if you would, Mr. Patterson, tell us just briefly about the Marion Franklin Opportunity Center. And following that, we're going to ask a wonderful, wonderful presenter, Mary Green, to come and share her story. Mr. Patterson.
Good evening, Dr. Good, Mr. Baker, the Board of Education, the board. I don't want to try to call all y'all's names because I might mess them up. My name is Robert Patterson. I'm the president of the Marion Franklin Civic Association. Robert Patterson, president of the Marion Franklin Civic Association. Today, we had our grand opening for the Marion Franklin Opportunity Center. We've been working ever since January the 17th of last year. It's up and running now, and I would like to thank y'all for giving us the opportunity to be in the schoolhouse. We got programs for people that done dropped out of school, had mistakes, and when they would have finished their education, seniors that never graduated, and anything that happened that you wasn't able to get an education, to get a job or nothing else. Our classes, we have classes going on, and it started off slow, but it is running now. It took patience and patience from the board, because the board, y'all have taught me patience. I'll be honest, y'all taught me patience, because we was trying to get computers, and it took us a little while. But I learned, I understand that what y'all had to do to go through it to make sure it was right. But it's beautiful now. It's beautiful. We got people coming in. We got adults coming in. We had a lady that come in was 73 years old to learn how to do a computer. We got people coming in to get the GEDs. And it's just so beautiful to see people coming in to get the education, to try to get a job, to learn so they can help the grandchildren, help the children. But I would really enjoy it if the board could have been out there to see the neighbors and the community give thanks for what we have in our community, because the school is beautiful, it's a great place, and I would like for one day just to give you, the Board of Education, a tour through it, so you can see what community and the school board can do when we work together. Because when we work together, we can accomplish a whole lot. Because fighting and arguing and that, you don't accomplish nothing. But when you work together and everybody have a vision and it comes together, it's beautiful. It is real beautiful. And I thank you very much. And I'm down here speaking for the Marion Franklin Civic Association, the South Side, to say thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for your years of service to the community. So we've had two great community leaders in here tonight. It's a real privilege for us to be in your presence. And so I know you've spent many years devoted and dedicated to your community. And it's at least in part due to the leadership of you and people like you that this project was able to come to fruition. So thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Actually, Board Member Reyes, you attended today.
So if I may impose on the board, let one of the students speak first, and that may answer some of the questions that you anticipate. So Mary Green, if you would indulge us with your presentation you gave so eloquently today. Bob, thank you so much.
Good evening, Dr. Good, and all the board members. I don't know everybody's name, but good evening.
Good evening.
I am Mrs. Mary Green. Mrs., I've been married for 53 years to the same man. We're both out of the cotton fields of Georgia. Okay. We have 17 grandchildren, 4 great-grandchildren. First, we also have 2 girls and a boy. Can't leave them out. Okay. First, I would like to welcome each and every one of you that came to hear me speak tonight. And we've learned so much at school that I started injecting some of the little adjectives that my teacher told me about. She said it'll help make your speech interesting. And by the way, I am having a wonderful experience learning and studying toward my GED. However, I have learned one is never too old. In fact, we do ourselves a disservice when we spend so much time being embarrassed to let anyone know that we need help. Once you take that first step, the next one will be easier. In fact, times and education techniques have changed so much. I think it'd be well for every one of us to go back and get a refresher course. Meanwhile, I'm so proud to be able to help my grandchildren more now. And when I say, honey, your answer is a little bit off, can you try it again? Then I hear how they come in and say, Grandma, how you know that? And I say with pride, I studied. They say, Grandma, you too old to study. I said, baby, you never too old to learn. So when I say, Grandma got homework, I looked at my teacher and I said, and we have homework. Well, I don't have Alzheimer's, but I'm always thinking because it seems like I'm always working. I go to school, I take the computer class after school, I work in my church, I volunteer with the food drive program, I volunteer with seniors, and some of those are like babies, but you have to be there and listen. I also bake and can, I pickle, I pick greens, I freeze them. I could go on, but I wouldn't even believe all the stuff I do. But when I can, I always answer. Please continue to support us in our endeavors to succeed. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Green. Yes, I do. She does. And Mrs. Green, I also have a district pin for you that I'd like to present you with. Thank you. Still getting done out there. Thank you. Anybody else need Kleenex?
No, Lincoln, Shannon, picking,
Kleenex, are you okay?
you busy lady.
Ah, okay, very good.
Thank you for all you do in the community.
All right, now, thank you so much, Mr. Patterson and Mrs. Green. Sure. Well, don't go anywhere, so just, you can take your seat, but don't go any farther than that. Board Member Reyes, would you like to share any comments?
Absolutely. You know, so I was taking a little break between my two jobs, but I am so grateful that I had the opportunity to attend. My mother never learned how to read or write. And she always told me, oh, I'm too old to learn, I'm too old to learn, I'm too old to learn. And she's always said that. But what she also told us is she always said, no seas burra como yo. So don't be a dummy like I am. She had 9 children, she worked in the fields, and she did the best she could. And one thing she did make sure was that everybody at least had a high school diploma before leaving our household, and all 9 of us did. So when we encounter opportunities like this, it's just amazing, because a lot of people do not believe, not only in our kids, but they don't believe in our parents. And the only reason a lot of us are here, my story is not unique. The reason a lot of us are here is because we had those parents. My mother didn't know how to read or write, but she sure knew if I had an answer in a blank. She sure knew how to talk to my teacher and say, what is she doing, what's she not doing? Give me a call, and that was a day of paddling. So she's like, I will gladly take the paddle and replace you in that endeavor. So, you know, and I never looked down on her for what she didn't have. I looked up more so as to what she did and what she did represent. And today, I was just telling Mrs. Gibbs, like, Mrs. Green was one of 3 speakers, and it's like Kleenex the whole time. Being proud, these are folks that have grown up in our community. These are products of our public school that decided that they still were going to come back and still were going to learn. Our volunteers, the Civic Association, I mean, it's a partnership. The Metropolitan Library, I don't know if we mentioned that earlier, they have a hub there. They talked about they're keeping a lot of their books there. And they're working out of that building. So they're going to be seeing resources and partners that normally we don't see. So this is an opportunity, west side, east side, north side, northwest, you know, whatever side we are from, to say, if we can do it in the south side, then we can do it on all sides of the city. You know, a lot of people say east side, strong side, west side, strong side. And we could not be more proud than the partnership with Columbus City Schools, the City of Columbus, Metropolitan Library, the Civic Association, and I hope that you heed the words to go and visit that center, volunteer. And I'll tell you one more thing. One of the speakers came back and she said, I want to volunteer in your center. I'm like, wait a minute, you're doing what you need to be doing. So another lesson that they're learning is not only continue to learn, but then pay it forward. So thank you very much for allowing me to attend to the event.
Thank you for attending on behalf of the board, Board Member Reyes. Are there other questions or comments from board members? Ms. Gibbs?
Yes. So, and thank you, Ms. Reyes, for giving me a moment so I can get it together. Ms. Green, you are an absolute inspiration. I'm the daughter of a teen mom and a garbage man, and my mom would have been the East High class of '65, but she got pregnant. And so there was no 6 inches from a desk. There was no amazing wraparound services that we had now. Back in the day, you got kicked out. And that's what she did. But she went back and got her GED. Married my dad and had me to sit here and ask all these questions. So blame it on her, all right? Blame it on her. But it was her pressing through and her commitment that we will all have diplomas because she didn't, and then making sure that we always give someone a second chance, and that even when we have young parenthood, that's not the end of adulthood, that there are still great things to come. They just came a little early. And she's always taught us that. And so I am inspired by your journey. I'm inspired by all of the students. When she said students, and Ms. Green started walking up, I was like, is she the grandma? Wait a minute. But you are the grandmother and the mother and the community pillar. So to you and to every single one, whether you're waiting to pass that last OGT or your last granddaughter is graduating from college, finish. And you are teaching us all an amazing lesson. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from board members? Mr. Superintendent?
Thank you, President Baker. So we would be remiss really if we didn't recognize the person that anytime Deanne Good has an idea and he shares it with her, somehow she makes it come to life. She's a very humble individual. Just so that you know, Board Member Reyes, we do have initiatives springing up all over the city. And unlike some of those initiatives that have benefactors that give millions of dollars, almost all of these are organic and they're implemented with very meager resources. But it's important to understand this person wasn't even on the program today, but without the leadership of our Executive Director, Peggy Cleary, none of this would have been possible. Okay, also tonight, let me share a number. It's hard to go on after that. Thank you again for coming. And again, thanks for helping Mary get here. That was such an important story. I want to share a number that's exemplary of our spirit of success. Just this past week, we received an updated scholarship total for the class of 2015. Our seniors earned a total of $42,152,971 in scholarships and grants. But we want that number to be higher for this year's seniors. So tomorrow night is our scholarship kickoff night to highlight the variety of scholarship opportunities we have in the district, with a special emphasis on students meeting application deadlines to colleges and universities. The event begins at 6:30 at Columbus North International. It'll be a combination of information and question answers, as well as presentations from Columbus City Schools alumni and scholarship recipients. There will be information provided regarding the Gates Millennium and the I Know I Can Founders Scholarships as well. And I know that some of the board members intend to be there as well. We'll also encourage students to attend the Bridge Builders Forum at Ohio State on October 31st, an event sponsored by the Gates Foundation and a Hispanic Scholarship Fund. The entire day is geared towards students and parents who want to learn more about applying to college and for financial aid. And on the topic of the future, this board already took the first step in creating an ad hoc committee as part of the Neighborhood School Development Partnership to consider future growth of the district. Starting, I believe, tomorrow, we will launch a portal on our website where community volunteers can share their interest in serving on that committee. The ad hoc committee, as you know, is being chaired by board members Gibbs and Peretti. And I've promised to both of them that we will work with the board to make this process inclusive of a variety of stakeholders across our community. Again, that portal will be found on our website at www.ccsoh.us. Finally, I started my report by talking about our efforts to make sure every one of our students has an opportunity at success everywhere they go, with everyone they meet, and for all of their lives. This commitment to our students is not just the responsibility of the employees of this district. or even just the responsibility of this board. If we want to truly offer all of our students an opportunity at success, we need the voices of all our community to be heard. And that's what the democratic process allows for. And I appreciate all of you for championing that process and encouraging all who care about our schools to make their voices heard. We want the spirit of success to run strong through our district and throughout our entire community on November 3rd and every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from board members for the superintendent on his report? Thank you very much. Let's move on then to the treasurer and ask you to present your report.
Thank you, President Baker. Tonight, the first of my reports is the final presentation on the 5-year forecast. This forecast covers the fiscal years 2016 through 2020. And as a reminder, some of the history of the preparation and review of this document, we prepared it in late August, presented it to the Finance and Appropriations Committee for their first review on September 14th, took their comments and recommendations, subsequently presented it again to them on the 29th of September, again hearing their input. So as you learned at the last meeting, there were some events that transpired between the 29th and the 6th, and October 6th was the first presentation to the board, and subsequent to that on October 15th, the FAC once again reviewed the document, and you have before you tonight the same document you saw on the 6th, but it's being presented tonight for your final approval. So all in all, we've had, this will be the 5th time we've had a presentation or a review of the document. We will then file this by the end of this month with the State Department. As a reminder, the document is really a 2-page forecast document accompanied by about 25 pages of supporting notes detailing economic conditions and assumptions that we made in preparing the report. Again, as a reminder, these are some of the major assumptions that have been included. Obviously, the FY15 actuals have been imputed into this forecast. Again, state aided plus 7.5%, out even beyond the current biennium. We've taken the fiscal 16 programs and projected those forward. No additional staff. We've aligned this with the appropriation resolution and the spending plan as best we can, and most recently adjusted for the TPP reimbursement, which came out on the 29th, which was a little bit less than what we had originally anticipated. Graphically, presentation of the forecast. It includes 3 years of history, the actual numbers, and then the 5 years of projection. This is a breakdown of our revenues, growing from $802 million in fiscal 16 to just about $900 million in fiscal 2020. On a percentage basis, because local revenues typically stay flat during the forecast and the state revenues are projected to grow a bit, you see local revenues at around 53% versus 44% for state sources in fiscal 16. They tend to even out by the end of the forecast, about 49% each in local and state. Again, that's because the state revenues are projected to grow where local revenues stay relatively flat. On the expenditure side, you'll see for fiscal 16 about $846 million in expenditures projected. That grows to $973 million. This breakdown into the various categories, if you do the math, 65% is in personnel and 35% in non-personnel. Now, in previous presentations, I've called out the charter school, community school expense, and told you that runs about 77% of our purchase services. So relative to other school districts, it distorts these percentages. So as a point of information, if we did not have that expense in our forecast or in our budgets, and we back that out, we would be more on a percentage basis like most other school districts at about 83% personnel and 17% non-personnel. So you can see that that charter expense, it just distorts for us that relative percentage. So for those who want to compare district to district, you have to keep that into mind, the significant part that that expense plays. A graph that I shared with you last time, which displays revenues and expenditures, and the key here is that the blue line of revenues is below the red line of expenditures, indicating that as forecasted, we're anticipating expenditures greater than the revenues we bring in, which means we will begin this year and into the out years eating away at the cash balance that is available. At the request of FAC and as a best practice, I have included a 30-day operating cash line as a point of reference. So when we plot our ending cash balance, which is the blue line, you can see where we are relative to that desired target. And you can see in fiscal 17, we dropped below the target. Fiscal 18 is our first year to hit basically ground zero and go slightly negative. And then the picture worsens from a cash balance standpoint out into fiscal 19 and fiscal 2020. As I said before, that 30-day operating cash is just an early warning signal that gives you an alert that we need to have a discussion about the revenue and expense imbalance. In any forecast, it's important, and we do include in the 26 some odd pages of notes what's included in the forecast. And most importantly for you to understand is that it's the current programming that we have projected forward. And equally important is a discussion of what's not included. And you heard it October 6th, Dr. Good explain in I think, quite a bit of detail some of the items that we see on the horizon that will impact these expenditure numbers, and they are not included in this forecast. Just as a reminder, I don't know that I'll read them all to you, and I don't know if Dr. Good wants to make any additional comments, but we went through these slides discussing items that we see on the horizon relative to the direct support for schools and students, direct support for academic services, and also direct support for district operations. These are items that the cost of which will be factored into our budgeting process in the years to come, but we want to make sure that the board's aware that as you look at these numbers, we're not planning on just doing what we do this year. We're a growing organization, and there's plenty more that we want to do for the community and the schools. On the revenue side, I mentioned to you that what we've not considered and is on the horizon is the impact of expiring TIFs and CRAs. We have win-win negotiations in the spring here with the suburban districts. And again, we face that dreaded state biennial budget question beginning in fiscal 18 and beyond. Again, we've made some assumptions about that, but what it actually ends up is certainly a risk in this forecast. Presented to you tonight and in board docs is the actual forecast as well as all the notes. And I present that to you for later approval in the consent agenda.
Does that conclude your report, Mr. Treasurer?
On the 5-year forecast, that concludes it.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to thank you on behalf of the entire board for providing additional opportunity to the board to have input, and you lengthened the process. You backed it up a little bit, and that's great. They gave us extra opportunity to study and to ask you questions. I wanted to thank you for that. Are there questions from board members? Actually, Ms. Hudson, as chair of FAC, do you have anything you'd like to start us off with?
Thank you, President Baker. I'll just right off the bat say that the Finance Appropriations Committee recommends approval, and I thought we had a very fulsome discussion of this forecast. There were a number of changes, and just because of the dynamics of ODE and life of the school system enterprise, there were some changes to this forecast. It's more dynamic than I'd like it to be, which is way outside of our control. But that said, I think the Finance Committee also, we spent I thought a good amount of time on the last slide about in the revenue considerations, what's not included, and talked to the treasurer about turning over some other additional rocks on, looking for, what's on the horizon in terms of local revenue, so that we've conducted that due diligence, and so that will be a topic of discussion hopefully very soon at an upcoming FAC meeting.
Very good. Other comments or questions, Mr. Cole?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Pahoric, for your presentation. Thank you, Madam Chair, for your leadership. You mentioned something, that this is a dynamic document, that there are things that we don't have control over. There are some things that we do, provided that, is there any idea of how much the needle could be moved up or down, considering some of the things that we haven't given assumption to in this budget? So some of these things that have been outlined as having not been included, do we have a percentage idea, a dollar amount idea of how much they may move the needle up or down?
President Baker, to Board Member Cole, we are not yet at the beginning of that budgeting process, but I think I outlined what would be ideal, not what currently is, but what would take us to next. And we're also cognizant that we will have to have some stretch plans in order to achieve those objectives. So as we begin the budgeting process, we talk about where we want to be and what may be reasonable to ask of the board and the Finance Committee in this next budget cycle and each subsequent one. For example, when we talked about new legislation associated with inhalers, we know that in urban settings, a disproportionate number of our students suffer from asthma conditions, and it would require licensed school nurses to be available at each of our sites instead of sharing licensed school nurses between sites. Is that something that would immediately need to be in place for next year, meaning we would have to seek appropriation to support 36 additional licensed school nurses, or is it something that can be phased in over time so that we can differentiate what resources we do have available? So those are the kinds of conversations we'll be having. To answer your question, we're not at a place yet where we could say exactly how much that needle would move.
When do you anticipate having that conversation or finalizing it?
So there's an entire timeline. Is it included in any of the documents we shared here? I know we had it at the Finance Committee.
The Finance and Appropriations Committee was presented with an initial budget review timeline. Folks had comments. For example, Board Member Gibbs was looking at it in terms of when would Innovation and Reform meet to then review some of those issues to then plug them into the budget process. So we can ask the budget director to bring that to a future meeting. He was going to go back based on comments from the committee and rework a couple of the dates on there so that we had an idea of what that process would look like. And but it's informed by last year's process. So we already had some additional ideas of other things to do, and we talked about, Board Member Gibbs was emphasizing some community, opportunity for more community input. So there will be, it's shaping up to be another fulsome process there too.
Any other questions or comments from board members? All right, did you have anything else you wanted to share, Board Member Hudson?
No, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Superintendent, anything else from you on that? Mr. Treasurer, thank you very much. So we'll contemplate the 5-year forecast as part of the consent agenda, as I understand it?
That is correct.
Okay, very good. Would you like to carry on with the monthly financial report?
I would love to carry on.
I know you
with
would.
Yet
Okay,
another
thank you.
exciting financial
Yes.
report to keep your attention. As with the 5-year forecast, this monthly financial report was reviewed by the Finance and Appropriations Committee last Thursday. This report represents the end of the first quarter. It's somewhat of a combination of August and September. We focused on September because we did not do a singular report yet on August. So once the September numbers came in, we moved forward with that and just included the August results with this report. In summary, on the revenue side, through the month ending of September, we have about $278 million in revenue and $205 million thus far in expenditures. When I look at variances against the current month-to-month plan for this fiscal year, you'll see that through September, a rather large number, $26.9 million under in revenues and about $4 million over in expenditures, and we focused in on several of the major contributors to this during the Finance and Appropriations meeting. This is simply a breakdown of your revenues by category. 183 million in property taxes, about 70 million in state aid, 10 million in additional monies from the state in terms of a property tax allocation, and then other revenues, as you can see there, totaling the 278 million year to date. When I look at the variances, there were three categories that we addressed at the Finance and Appropriations Committee meeting. First, the general property tax variance of 4.3 million under plan, the state aid at 2.8 million under plan, and the property tax allocation of 16.5 million under plan. The balance of the variances are attributed mainly to timing, and we expect those to work themselves out over the balance of the fiscal year. On the real property tax side, we believe that number is pretty much on target as we watch it month to month. As you can see here, it flowed as we would expect it, coming in July, a large portion in July, and then settlement in August. We're not terribly concerned about that unfavorable variance at this point. We'll see how first half tax collections of next year come in, but we don't believe we need to adjust our annual estimate at this point relative to this variance. It's only 2.8%. It's on 4.3 million is on about 187 of planned and 183 million of actual. Year to date, just give you a picture that we look pretty reasonably on target. On state aid, there's a slight uptick this past month on some of the categories that this can vary from month to month, but some of the categories that aren't subject to the cap bumped up a little bit in that monthly payment, and this again is a variance of about 2.8 million on 73 million of plan, or 3.9% under plan. We believe we're still on target to hit 293 million that we have in our fiscal 16 plan. I will tell you that October is an important month as current year enrollment data comes into play, as well as data on the state budget, and the 7.5% increase in the cap will begin to be reflected in our foundation payments from the state. So in a nutshell, we believe that any shortfall at this point in terms of the revenue side on state foundation should catch itself up over the next few months. One of the items I shared with the Finance and Appropriations Committee was to look at an annualized number for this line, this state aid line, and primarily those items that are subject to the cap. We did this calculation to show you what they look like on various reports that we get bi-monthly, twice a month when we receive our payments. And this is an annual number that I look at, and you can see that from July, the first payment in July through the second payment in October, the annual number was about just under $277 million. It stayed pretty steady. Keep in mind that this is the time period that they're using fiscal 15 data. Now, as a preview for next month, because we weren't really reporting out on October, but I did have the data, I can show you that that number for those two lines jumps to 297 million. And if you recall, I've got 293 in the plan. So you can see that the calculation we made to what we thought it would be seems to bear itself out in the data we're now getting from the state in the first payment in October. We don't have the data yet for the second payment in October to see if this remains to be true, but it looks like this reflects the 7.5% increase fairly accurately. October will be a big month, not only on the revenue side, but also on the expenditure side as we get into the deductions and see what our actual data for this year is going to do and play out in that calculation. One of the things I did for the committee was to track this estimate for this line over time. I like to just keep this chronology going. Back in May, we had a number about 292.7. In the month-to-month plan, we plugged in 293. In this forecast that you're going to adopt, we've got 299 in there for the forecast. And on the as I just showed you, in the October number, it looks like 297. So if I were a betting man, I would say the state revenue is going to have a 2.9 handle on it. It's going to be the 290-some million range. And again, these numbers are all generated at different points in time with different pieces of information that are available. And so I keep track of them, and then as we get our monthly reports in, we'll see how we're bearing down on one of these numbers or something in between. Moving on to the state property tax allocation, this is a $16.6 million unfavorable variance, and I just mapped this out for the committee to show what the plan month-to-month is and how the actuals came in. Actually, the TPP reimbursement came in a little bit earlier than we anticipated, came in August. We expect this, again, to work itself out in October and November as the state processes the rollback and homestead exemption payments. You have to be certified to the state, and then the state turns around and sends it back through the county auditors to us. So you'll see that we're anticipating a payment in this category all in May. Last year, that was one of the items that was delayed until June, but we did back the plan up to a more realistic month, and we anticipate that all to come in on May. On the revenue side, I cleaned up the graph. If you recall, my first presentation on the monthly reports had a graph that I was fearful would get too complicated and messy as the actual data got plotted in. That proved to be correct, and since I didn't understand the graph, I thought I'd simplify it a little bit. But I organized revenues into local revenues, state revenues, and non-operating revenues so we can track our progress over time. Subject to the variances and the rationale that I explained here at this presentation, we're pretty much on target, and we can watch that over time. On the expenditure side, of the $205 million that have been expended year to date, about $138 million in personnel and the balance in non-personnel areas. The variances that we discussed at the committee were two. It seems to be our favorite topic to discuss the variances in the school choice line item for community school STEM and scholarship deductions. So far, based upon the plan, shows about $4.8 million running over plan, or 13.9%. And the other item that we discussed a bit was the supplies and materials line at $5.4 million over plan. On the supply side, that's a matter of how the plan was designed. And in part, I did not account for, mentioned to you, we had a large purchase order carry forward from last year for textbooks. I didn't factor that in to be spent that early in the year. I used prior year's expenditures to predict the flow, so that is in part the explanation. And then we've got some work to do in that line to look at some warehousing activity goes on in terms of ins and outs when you buy purchases to warehouse them and then charge them out. That caused some interesting aberrations in the prior year data that, quite frankly, I had not seen before. So we're going to smooth that out in subsequent discussions. So we're not concerned about that variance now because we know what it's attributable to. Keep in mind in all the non-personnel line items that the expenditures are controlled by your appropriation. So even pluses or minuses in terms of variances, we're not going to exceed the appropriation in those areas. So if you run high in one month, it's going to work itself out in the subsequent months. But it's good to know whether or not that's a behavioral change at times, or is it really a matter of how I estimated the month-to-month flow. We spent a fair amount of time looking at the charter schools, as I call them, school choice option for objects 478 and 479. And what I presented to the committee, again, were some annual numbers that we have our hands on and the sources of those numbers. The first line here is, it's called a School Foundation Payment Report, or SFPR. And that is a bi-monthly report of what shows our bi-monthly payment, but it also shows the annual amount that they're calculating that bi-monthly payment on. And as you can see over time, it stayed pretty steady at about $160 million for these two categories. In our plan, though, we take an annual number and back it into a monthly number, this time based upon last year's expenditure patterns. And as you can see, the plan was much lower, 139 to 140 million each would be an annual number. And what I did was I took the monthly amounts that I have in the plan and just annualized them to 12 so I could see if this repeated itself 12 times for the whole year, would we be on target? And then there's a listing of the actuals. And you can see the actuals actually run very close to the SFPR, which they should, but because of some cash flow things, when the number changes and how they catch us up, it can vary a bit. But those two numbers should track right on top of each other. The graph is of those three line items that you can see. When I did this, it raised my eyebrow to say, why is our plan so much lower? So what I did in looking at it was, well, what was the basis for our month-to-month plan? And that's this. This is last year's expenditures. And quite frankly, I failed to factor in the fact that last year we were significantly delayed in getting the enrollment numbers in. And so if you recall, we had a huge jump in April. And quite frankly, the plan would have been a lot better if I would have just done 112. Okay? And that's what I explained to the committee. So I went back and I did that. And I said, well, what if, rather than using last year's expenditure pattern, which should not be repeated, what if we do 112? I did that and it did an adjusted plan number. So we would have expected about 163 million on an annualized basis in each one of those time periods. When you plot that out, you see that what we have in the plan appears to be pretty ample to cover what we now know, and we're getting it from both the actual and the SFPR reports. So I felt much better about that. I don't know if any committee members jumped out of their chairs at that, but I certainly did the first time I saw it and kind of scrambled to understand what I had done logically that was, quite frankly, incorrect. So I think we're from a budget standpoint, we're on target appropriation-wise to meet this expense. Again, October is a big month, so we'll have to see what the foundation reports tell us in October and November and the ensuing months when those enrollment numbers roll in. Using the smoothed out plan, I wanted to show the committee what would our variance actually have been, and I highlighted here, instead of 4.9 over, we'd be about 700,000 over, and it's a very, like 0.4% variance, so we're right on target to that smoothed out plan number. Just a graph of where we are, personnel and non-personnel, again, some way to graphically track how we are doing month to month on and then on a year-to-date basis. So I think all in all, can't recall any really significant or huge issues outstanding from the Finance Committee meeting, just knowing well that we're on track with the plan well, but again, we've got some big numbers coming out here in the next few weeks.
The committee was asking about enrollment, so I think they're anxious to see those numbers.
Yeah, that's a key driver, especially to the deduction side.
Mm-hmm.
So that concludes my monthly financial report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. And Board Member Hudson, would you like to preface our conversation with any comments?
No, just in case, as I was saying, the treasurer, that the board or the committee is very interested in the updated enrollment numbers to see how the actuals match up with our anticipated numbers. We know that, as we heard reported, that the enrollment trends are up in the district. They appear to be up in the charters as well. So, but we don't know how much.
Other questions or comments? Ms. Gibbs?
Thank you, Treasurer Bajorek, for that. Just a quick question for Dr. Good. Can you refresh my memory on what I thought used to be count week? The big October count week. What Treasurer Bajorek mentioned is that October is very important for tracking numbers. And I remember once upon a time there was a big count week. Can you tell us?
I can. President Baker, to Board Member Gibbs. Actually, I'll invite Dr. Klein to the podium because there is no longer a count week.
That's what I thought.
And
Okay.
she can help maybe clarify what does occur now. Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Klein.
Thank you very much, Dr. Good. Thank you, Board President Baker, Vice President Stewart, members of the board. Our Treasurer Bajorek, I'm going to say your name correctly, Internal Auditor Ms. Smith. Thank you for allowing me to come forward. We do not have an account week anymore. It's actually a good thing for everyone in Ohio. We actually have multiple reporting periods now in which the state actually draws our real lifetime data. And so what that really means is that we are reporting on a more current basis, and so we are given credit for our enrollment at the actual time periods 3 times a year that they are taking the enrollment. So it's no longer just once a year and much more fair. Now keep in mind, it doesn't exactly affect our money the way we would hope that it would do because we're capped. If we weren't, that might be a different story, but we are. But it does affect our enrollment numbers. To your question earlier with regard to our charter and our community schools, we really don't have that answer right now. So anyone that tells you that enrollment is up in charters and communities, they don't know what they're talking about, because ODEX does not allow us to actually get that data. So last week, when I actually told Dr. Good, yes, I'll get the data for you right now, and I went into the system, I actually sent him a screenshot. I was wrong. ODEX was completely down, and I called the state to verify. And what has happened is they have taken it completely down so that the charter community schools can get their information ready, and we'll be starting to report that now, but we do not have that number for you yet, ma'am. So I can't actually tell you if community school numbers are up or down, but I can tell you Columbus City Schools is up, and that I can tell you because we are current on our withdrawals, and we are current on our enrollments, and so that's really good news. And we're just up to 5% increase, so we're a little over 51,893 students. Thank you.
Yes, Board Member Hudson.
From a district representative, but it's all good.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Treasurer.
What Dr. Klein deals with in terms of when they pull the data and how that makes the final circle to hit the finance side of things, there's a time lag. And one of the loops that I want to help close and work with Dr. Klein on is, what are the numbers that I see come out of the system on the finance side? How does that correlate to what she knows as going into the system? Now, we can't do that on charter schools because they self-report, so I don't know how we do that, but I'm trying to close that loop a little bit so she knows, boy, we've collected all this great data, and in it goes, and then what comes out the other side? And so we have to get together still, and we're working on that. We're getting there.
Dr. Klein.
And there is a time delay, is my point. So that's why I deal with those annual numbers. You'll see those annual numbers move, and then they get translated into a monthly payout or a bi-monthly payout, and it's not always, time-wise, an immediate reaction.
So I have to share a quick story with you. So when I first started working in the EMIS land, I'm a numbers person, and I believe a child is a 1.0, correct? Well, I kept getting information back, and I know Dr. Good knew this and probably thought I was silly, but I didn't understand it because it would give me like 1.5 children, 1.89. It would give me all these funny numbers, and I'm like, wait a minute. We don't split a child. What is this? And so this is actually what Mr. Bohoric is talking about. So what happens in the land of EMIS is all of these numbers are compiled, and then we have something called fatal errors. And fatal errors are when I'm reporting someone from CCS and maybe ECOT is claiming them also, and that's a fatal error because we're clashing. And so our enrollment overlaps. And so what we have to do is we have to come to terms with each other, and we have to make a decision on who really has that child. It's not as easy as you might think, and sometimes there are some gray lines, and so we have to work together with our other EMIS partners throughout the state and also throughout other states and other countries. So when Mr. Bohoric talks about the numbers and how they fluctuate, it's because some students move in and some students move out. Some students are a multiplier because of their special education needs. Some students are 1.0. So there's all different variables that go into this wonderful mathematical equation that Mr. Bohoric has to balance out.
Thank you. Thank you. You do? Ms. Gibbs, you have a question?
Yeah, not about that, though. Just a quick question on slide 21. On our monthly expenditure flow, on our projections for personnel in the green line, we project a very large spike in January. And can you just tell me one more time what that is attributed to? The 3 pay month. Thank you.
You have 2 months. You have 2 months out of the year where it's just 3 pay. And if you recall, when I talked about the plan a couple months ago, we had July and August flip-flopped. So those months will sometimes move on us, but it's the 3 pay month.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
If there are no other questions for the treasurer on his report, thank you very much, Mr. Treasurer. We appreciate your hard work and follow-through and partnership with the Finance Appropriations Committee. All right, let's move on then to the Internal Auditor. Madam Internal Auditor, have you anything to share with the board this evening?
Thank you, President Baker. I don't have anything at this time.
Okay, very good. Good to see you. Let's move on then to board matters. And as you know, earlier there was an email from Mr. Benton talking about two pieces of legislation that were added to the agenda. They will not be part of the consent agenda, and we will vote on them separately and individually. So, Resolution 6.1, it comes as a recommendation from the superintendent. By signing up for board members to attend the 2015 OSBA Capital Conference, all district employees receive complimentary registration. And as you know, if you've been before, there are lots of good sessions, networking opportunities at this conference. I am pleased that Dr. Good is encouraging staff to represent the district and take part. And I hope many of you, if not all of you, will also have the opportunity to participate. It's an excellent conference. Are there, actually, the chair will entertain a motion that we approve this piece of legislation, 6.1.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there discussion? All right. Hearing none? Oh, Ms. Hudson.
To comment, thank you, President Baker, that Treasurer Bohoric and our Budget Director, Scott Gooding, will be presenting on the budget process, so I'll be there for color commentary, but they'll be presenting on our budget process, which I think at some point it'd be good to do a little bit of a deep dive with the board again, that as Mr. Director Gooding has been comparing notes with other districts, that our process is really head and shoulders above in terms of some now best practices in school budget and finance efforts. So he and the treasurer have been are going to share that good news and their process with the other Ohio districts.
Very good. I look forward to seeing that presentation. Other comments on this particular piece of legislation? Ms. Gibbs?
Yes, absolutely. I just would say the OSBA mission is to lead the way in educational excellence by serving Ohio's public school board members. It is an organization dedicated to making sure we do our jobs well. And Capital Conference brings together about 10,000 people. It's the largest in the country, second only to Chicago by maybe 100 or so attendees, and it is really a place where they'll get to hear about our zero-based budgeting, but we'll get to hear from other people about essential board policies for 2016, raising minority achievement, and how to look for hot topics that boards might encounter. So it's an amazing time, and this year's keynote speakers are Jane Polly and a guy named Leland Melvin, who is the only NFL player to become an astronaut. And they always provide very inspirational stories of perseverance, and most of them have public school ties and support. So it's an amazing time to learn from our peers from both urban, suburban, and rural districts.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gibbs, and thanks also to you for serving as the board's delegate on the OSBA Board of Trustees. Seeing no other hands, Mr. Treasurer, please call the roll.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Ms. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Peretti?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Vice President Stewart?
Yes.
President Baker?
Yes.
That motion carried.
Thank you very much. The next piece of legislation we will consider is 6.2, resolution to approve field and other district-sponsored trips. This second piece is brought to us as a result of the new policies approved by the board this past summer, and Dr. Rausch is at the podium to talk to us about this particular piece of legislation. Dr. Rausch?
Thank you, President Baker. As you know, the board adopted a slew of new policies that went into effect this past summer. This is one of those. It is a policy governing field and other district-sponsored trips. As part of that policy, it came to our attention that the board has to approve those field trips and then any other district-sponsored trips that occur 50 miles or more from the district or that require an overnight stay. And so what we have before you today are the trips that are scheduled here in the next 2 weeks for our schools and for the district that we have coming up. We'll continue to bring these in front of the board at subsequent meetings to make sure that we're in compliance with the policy as adopted. I certainly would encourage all of you to to adopt this resolution this evening, we have a number of these trips scheduled. We have a lot of kids going to the zoo, kids going to pumpkin patches. Those are just a few of the things that I noted as I was helping compile this list. So,
First, the chair will entertain a motion that we approve this piece of legislation, then we'll have discussion.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All right, is there discussion on this piece of legislation? Ms. Gibbs?
Please tell my kids I moved it first. Just tell them.
We'll do that.
Amazing work, and thank you to all of the staff, really. The staff, the parents, the volunteers that chaperone on these trips, everyone who makes it possible for the learning outside of the classroom to occur. This is a value, and everything doesn't just happen within four walls. So it's very important our students, just like we heard earlier, get a chance to, whether it's Wisconsin or going to DC for close-up, or going, I know some of our schools travel internationally. This is important to help enrich the lives of students. So thanks to all the staff that brave the overnights from the kids when you want to go home, to give them these experiences.
Absolutely. Are there other questions or comments? Mr. Cole?
Thank you again for, bringing this before us. Thank you, staff, for creating these types of opportunities, particularly where we're increasing learning. So where we do have the opportunity for students to enjoy some of the amenities of our community, they're also there learning. Things, we're connecting the dots with math, with the Pythagorean theorem, with Ames. So I'm excited about some of the things and opportunities we're creating for students to learn outside of the classroom.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments on this particular piece of legislation? If not, Mr. Treasurer, please call roll.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Ms. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Prunty?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Vice President Stewart?
Yes.
President Baker?
Yes.
And Mr. Cole?
Yes.
That motion carried.
Very good. Thank you. Let's move on now to our consent agenda. The chair will entertain a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there discussion on the consent agenda from board members? Ms. Hudson?
Oh, thank you, President Baker. I just wanted to point out and applaud the resolution at 11.4. And I recall asking a question about this last year. This is the purchase of click clock trays, which I thought was is always a fun thing to say. But last year was, I didn't understand why that was pulled out. I think, a year makes a difference. This is a great example of how unbundling some of our services will help us better meet LEDE goals. It isn't the policy, it's how we implement it. And so I want to applaud this effort, but I'd love to see more of these on our agenda on a regular basis. So just put that out there as we're looking at LEDE policy. And, I was part of the subgroup that looked at those policies, and again, I think it's about the implementation, and this is a great example of unbundling those purchases so that we can get local vendors involved and get the community involved in supplying our district.
Thank you very much. Yes, a year does make a big difference, doesn't it? Because we all know how important click clock trays are now. Thank you very much, and well said, Ms. Hudson. Mr. Cole?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to applaud the district administration on its continued commitment to our at-risk students, to those students who deserve that second opportunity, to those students who need these systems within our district to be able to capture them and bring them back into our classrooms. So our partnerships that we've renewed with PALS and the YMCA programs that capture our truant students and bring them back. And as a result, we've seen a lowering number in truancy, in the district. So I'm excited about us being able to approve the resources needed to make these programs work and to continue to keep our arms wrapped around our students who, for whatever reason, decide that school is not cool enough, that maybe I don't want to go today. Well, we're bringing them back into the classroom. We're keeping them in the district. Thank you for that.
Thank you, and those comments were based on legislation 10.2, 3, 4, and 5, presumably. All right. Yes, Ms. Hudson.
Just to that point, thank you so much, Board Member Cole, for bringing that up. I was just wondering if the superintendent might talk about those programs quickly. They're a big part of tonight's agenda.
President Baker, to Board Member Hudson, I'm going to invite Cheryl Ward to come up and speak to these, because we actually entered into rather lengthy renegotiation of these contracts, looking specifically at the data associated with recidivism, and so our students actually falling off the wagon even though they've been through the intervention programs, and our partners have been wonderful at making revisions to those programs, so we're very proud to bring those forward now.
Absolutely. Ms. Ward?
Yes. Board, President Baker, Board Member Hudson, and to the board, a few things that are before you. One is the PALS program that Board Member Cole discussed. And a large part of that, actually, there was a news article, I don't know if you saw it in the Dispatch, that talked about alternatives to suspension. And I think our district is one of those that do innovative things, and sometimes we don't recognize how innovative we really are. And so there's a structured program with things in place and staff in place to be able to offer alternatives and be able to offer building administrators alternatives for students being out of school. Although there are two separate programs, the Truancy Center as well as PALS, that also affords us the ability not to have our young people who are not in school in the community, or maybe potentially having some interest in engaging in some activities that may not be of the character that we want to be represented within our district. And so with the Truancy Center and the combination with the Columbus Police Department, we do have the ability to have them pick up students and take them to a safe location that is supervised, that is monitored, where we are identifying and contacting parents to let them know where they are, what is happening. And we also encourage them and the staff at that particular location talks with the parents and with the students about truancy laws, the impact, the effects, and begins to engage them. Our superintendent is correct that I have been in some pretty significant conversations with Truancy Center and with the PALS program to continue to enhance the program delivery, the program service, and particularly this year we are beginning the connection from the PALS program back to school buildings. So when our young people are there, making sure that loop is tied back into the building administrator. We are implementing what we're calling PALS coordinators. So there are liaison at the building levels to make sure that they are monitoring and keeping track of those students who are coming back, making sure they're connecting with counselors, making sure they're connecting with social workers so that we are not losing them, and we are magnifying and maximizing what they learned at the PALS program, and in particular with our Directions for Youth program that allows us access to be able to have young people who need services access to mental health assessment without wait. And for that, and the mental health community is huge because unfortunately, coming from mental health, sometimes there are significant waits in terms of months for a young person to be seen. And so the ability to be able to access a service so that our young people don't wait and are able to be assessed and be able to be identified with the necessary services that wrap around not only them and their families in the community, but also benefit us as we provide service academically, to remove those barriers and to give them the opportunity to be able to be successful.
Well said, Ms. Ward.
All right.
Other questions or comments from board members?
Mr. Cole. Thank you, Ms. Ward. Thank you for your leadership, and that also of Don Hurd with the YMCA. So thank you guys for what you're doing.
Welcome.
And the key is it's about return on investment. And so every dollar that we spend, we have to make sure it has the most impact, most positive impact on our students. And so I really appreciate the time that you have spent. And I appreciate Superintendent taking feedback from the board on some of these agreements. And so thank you very much. Well done. Any other comments on this piece of legislation? Thank you, Ms. Ward. All right, comments on other pieces. Let me just say, if you don't mind, I wanted to point out the I Know I Can legislation. I know we've already spoken to it briefly. Ms. Gibbs wants to speak to it, but she's on the board, and so she wants to abstain. So there's no appearance of impropriety. But Mr. Superintendent, could I call on you to just briefly talk about what the I Know I Can expansion means to our students, or whoever you designate? Yes, please.
You can indeed, and we're going to invite Ms. Ward back up to the podium. You know, when you find someone as passionate as she is about the social emotional supports to help our students make good decisions and be successful beyond our walls, you do what any good manager would do, and you give them more responsibilities.
Yes.
to President Baker, one of the things in the board, with the expansion of services, one of the things that are highlighted within the expansion is prior to the expansion, we had I Know I Can advisors who served 1 day a week in all of our high schools. With the expansion, and they were limited to grade level because there were a certain number of them. And so with the expansion, a part of the expansion allows for several different things. It has increased an additional 20 staff within the I Know I Can advisor pool that has allowed for an advisor to be at a building for 4 days. And so it has also allowed for the increase of service, one-on-one, I Know I Can advising, as well as group from 9th through 12th. Before, there was more of an emphasis at the senior year, because those are the more critical milestone moments, right? Making sure your FAFSA's in, making sure your college applications are done. And so what the expansion does is increases the access of that service delivery, working alongside our school counselors and making sure that there's a comprehensive approach. It also is very timely with the state mandate around college and career awareness. And we are very proud to know that we had a group over the summer who worked very diligently to make sure we have the expectations of the state mandate in place. And so what that means is that at building levels, buildings are responsible for having what they call building plans around college and career awareness. And so I Know I Can, as well as our school counselors and principals, are also a part of that process and making sure we meet the mandates. And so we do that through our Naviance lessons. We do that through activities, college trips, and tours that I Know I Can has provided. I Know I Can also allows for fee waivers. And they will pay for particularly for seniors, 3 fee waivers from I Know I Can. They also will make sure that they are increasing the one-on-one advising, the group advising, and so that we have a comprehensive collection of services that ensures the district priority of making sure that all of our students are prepared and ready to go to college, military, secure a job, but certainly have the ability and the awareness to know that college is available, and being able to teach parents that college is available and it's an option, and it's a realistic option. And so enhancing our college-going culture as a district, what we want to do is take it one step further, and that is making sure even from elementary level, our elementary students are aware of college. And then quick plug for November, College and Career Month, College Application Month that are happening in our high schools. Our Know I Can advisors are also part of our district initiatives that are able to make sure that we are maintaining and sustaining. The program on Wednesday is also an example of a collaboration within the partnership that we will do, making sure that families are aware of scholarships and application fees and deadlines and all of those things that go along with college and college access.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. Other questions? Mr. Cole?
Are there other initiatives tied to this I Know I Can piece that introduce students to career opportunities, say in the Department of Fire with the city, things to that effect? Are there linkages there as well?
So within our Naviance lessons that we utilize, and we utilize at middle school and high school, there are career exploration skills and opportunities. And what happens is we have our students do those career explorations, and then the counselor and or the Now I Can advisor will talk to them really about a pathway, about areas of interest, things that reflect them. Many times they realize that there are situations or careers that they never thought of, but because of the inventories, because of the Naviance lessons that are provided and the conversations around those lessons, it opens up opportunities that maybe a young person had not thought about. So yes, and then based on that information, counselors and I Know I Can advisors also work with those individuals to make sure that they have an awareness and an opportunity to be able to continue to expose themselves to those career options.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very good. Mr. Superintendent, did you have something to add?
I do, President Baker, members of the board. I think it's important to highlight again what Ms. Ward shared, that the Columbus Education Association worked with us on how we integrate those I Know I Can advisors, and we're certainly grateful to them for being partners as well in this initiative.
Thank you. That's a good point. And let's recognize Tracy Johnson, who is in the audience. Thank you very much for your partnership, ongoing partnership. Thank you, Ms. Ward. I think you can sit down now. All right, any other questions on any piece of legislation within the consent agenda? All right, Mr. Treasurer.
Ms. Sutton?
Yes.
Mr. Peretti?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Vice President Stewart?
Yes.
President Baker?
Yes.
Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes, except for 10.5, where I must abstain for a personal conflict, for I know I can.
That motion carried.
Thank you very much, everyone. Mr. Superintendent, would you like to share some news?
I would. President Baker, Vice President Stewart, members of the board, I am truly honored to introduce to our Columbus City School professional learning community the newly board-approved executive assistant to the superintendent, Stephanie Howe. Stephanie, would you please stand? And in the spirit of appropriately embarrassing my newest assistant, I will read a little bit about her that I plan to share with the full staff tomorrow. Stephanie has been a colleague of ours for 13 years, the last 11 in support to district senior leadership. As you know, her work ethic is exemplary, her work product extraordinary, and her work disposition always professional. You can be assured that correspondence with me will be handled by her with the usual expedience and grace, and when requested an appropriate confidentiality that it is entitled. She is married to, and I'm going to go ahead and make the introductions on your behalf, to Jeff, and Jeff, I believe, is here. Stand up, Jeff. Yay. And she has 3 daughters. Her favorite daughter, Cameron, is a high school freshman. Cameron, stand up so we can see, yay. And Cameron, you know, if Sydney were here, I'd tell Sydney she was her favorite daughter. And Sydney's a college senior at Bowling Green. And Tatum, who's her daughter that lives in Minnesota, is the mother of, in Stephanie's words, the most beautiful, magnificent, precocious granddaughter, Lauren, who is age 7. Tridestone Missionary Baptist Church counts Stephanie among its valued parishioners as she aptly and humbly serves on the women's leadership team there. Stephanie is a 9-year survivor of breast cancer. And she ensures that we all rightly wear pink on Thursdays in October. And when she isn't watching the Buckeyes or watching what she calls the Thursday night lineup, and Ms. Gibbs, you know what that means. She loves doing crafts and gardening. And like many of you, Stephanie Howe lives by the golden rule, and she didn't hesitate when I asked her this afternoon what she believes about Columbus City Schools. She was very quick, without hesitation, to state the awesome people that work here. I love the employees, their dedication, their commitment to educating our children, our future, she emphasized. And from what I've observed of Stephanie in the last 28 months I've been with the district, she indeed epitomizes what it means to be a model employee, a servant leader, a confidant. I hope you will all join me in welcoming Stephanie Howe again to the position of Executive Assistant to the Superintendent. And yes, Jeff, I'm the work husband.
Yes, indeed. So thank you. And the board joins the superintendent in recognizing your efforts over the past 13 years and look forward to working with you in your new role. All right. Anything else, Mr. Superintendent? Okay, thank you very much. So let's move on then to announcements. Board members, do any of you have anything you'd like to share briefly? Any points of pride or anything else you'd like to share with the board or community? Mr. Cole?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. My point of pride is just a few things. One, myself, our board president, W. Shauna Gibbs, had the opportunity to go to Long Beach, California for the Council of Great City Schools convention that they had held there. It was a phenomenal experience. And for those who wonder what these experiences are like, you hear, oh, they went to California, but you really don't understand how back to back to back these experiences are. You were really up from can't see in the morning till can't see at night, constantly learning, seeing what other school districts are doing and what we're doing. So with that, I had the opportunity to sit through a presentation, so did my board colleagues, for Alicia Gillison and also Miss Sandy Donald, who gave 2 outstanding presentations, and I pay no pageantry. If you are whack, I'm going to say it. But they gave an outstanding presentation on what we're doing in terms of best practices here in the district. Alicia talked about the gains that we've made academically and how we did that, how we took a grass tops to grassroots approach to improving student achievement in the district. Shared her presentation on the belief gap and how we've infused the ideals of this district to encourage student behavior and encourage a culture of achievement from top to bottom. I was just absolutely impressed. Everybody in the room had questions for her. So it was really a point of pride to share with 64 districts, some of the biggest districts in the country, about what we're doing well here in the state of Ohio, and more importantly, in Columbus. I'll let Shauna talk about what she saw with Ms. Donald. But it was just a real amazing experience for me. Again, I learned quite a bit. 2 things that stuck out for me that really touched my heart in terms of my role here as your board member. The first was the challenge that the superintendent of San Francisco gave each and every one of us in the room. He said, I want you to walk away and promise me 2 things. First, that you will be about empowerment of people and families as opposed to engagement. Empower versus engage. He taught us to really, he challenged us to turn the lens, if you would, turn the prism at a light here and look at something from a totally different perspective. And I had an epiphany at that moment. The other piece that he shared with me that was revelation, or with us, excuse me, was the idea of, there you go, system change versus system improvement. Changing the system versus improving the system. And the analogy that he made was a quote that he had taken, and I'll paraphrase it from Benjamin Franklin, who in a very elitist fashion stated that, you know, education should be broken up into 2 fashions, one that educates the elite and one that educates the laborers who you can pull from the rubbish. Only a few of them you'll be able to pull from the rubbish. I encourage you to look that quote up. But what it taught me is that, again, if we're about continuing this kind of education that has subsisted since that time, the 1700s, then, and we see where it's not working best for us, then it's time to make a change. It's time to take the effort to see how we do more than just reform the system, but change it, and change it for the better, so that everybody in this system who operates or uses it operates at their optimum and receives their greatest gift of a quality education. I'm thankful for the experience. I learned a great deal, and there's a lot that I'm about to do with the committees I'm presiding over that are going to live up to what I learned in California. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Cole. Board Member Gibbs?
Yes, well, thank you. And thank you to the colleagues for allowing us to attend. You know, what we read about is kind of what we think of each other. When you go to a national stage, you hear about what other people think about you, and that is important. So had the wonderful opportunity to spend time with our literacy and our math teams. And the idea that we were able to get that, y'all might not think this is big. Our 3rd grade guarantee was in the 40s. And because of what Ms. Donald and her team did, we are in the 90s. And that is huge. And people want to know, how did you do that? Because they haven't been able to do that. So hearing what other people said, wow, how did y'all pull that off? And when we're in the Council of Great City Schools, we're the small district, just for the record. We have 50,000. Long Beach has 79,000. They're in the middle district too. So we're sitting next to Vegas, who has 329,000 students. And if they are in awe of what we're doing, I know we're doing something well. So again, another amazing presentation, as well as we went to support the Columbus State President David Harrison and Mr. Johnson, who is the principal at Northland Academy, and they presented on College Credit Plus. and Credit Flex. And people, again, amazed at not just what we do, but how we do it. And we were equally as amazed at how Indianapolis integrates their career tech and how they're able to come up with ideas of that you'll hear coming out of Innovation and Reform on how they put together new innovative programs. We've mastered STEM, we've mastered art, but we're going to look at all of our offerings and say what's missing. Do we need, we went to sessions on truancy, on restorative justice in the district, on Move in the Middle, which is our term, but middle school programs that challenge our students. And it allowed us to look at what we're doing and know we're doing very well, but realizing that there are other programs that we can bring to this district. And more importantly for us, what are the policies that support innovation and empowerment? No longer change, but what are the policies and what should the board consider to support your superintendent, to support your treasurer in budgeting, and how they, Cleveland has an amazing new enrollment data initiative and how they can project data. What are the board policies and what do we need to look for to support our staff so they can be as innovative as possible and we stay out of the way, so to speak? So again, amazing, great presentations on working with our labor partners, working with public-private partnerships, working with governments to get things done. So, job well done.
All right, thank you very much, Board Members Cole and Gibbs. I think they enjoyed their time at the conference and learned a lot. Yes, very passionate about what we saw there. Any other board members have anything they would like to share, announcements? Yes, Ms. Reyes.
So I just wanted to reiterate the announcement that Dr. Good said earlier. It might have been missed, but there is a Bridge Builders. Was that me? I didn't do it. Oh. Is my phone? I was trying to look for the. Taking everything away from me. Now I gotta do it. Good thing I wrote it down. I was looking it up. Need my readers too. Need your readers. So it's the Bridge Builders Forum at Ohio State University. It is on the October 31st from 8:30 to 5. And this is a partnership between Gates Millennium Foundation and the Hispanic Scholarship Fund, encouraging all our students to attend. It's an opportunity to learn how to apply for that scholarship. For those that do not know, we have had many Columbus City School kids attain that scholarship, meaning that they can get school paid for all the way to their doctorates. So again, parents, school for free from bachelor to master's to doctorates if they so choose to. And it's all about making that application because we have the smart students. They need the opportunity, and this forum provides them an opportunity not only to learn how to apply, because a lot of times that's what it is. How do you apply for this application? It's not whether you are the talent, it's that applications are difficult. And they will also have over 300 schools, an opportunity for other schools to come and provide their information. So if you're interested in going to those schools, I think that student that wants to go somewhere out of state's gone, but so that's an opportunity to attend. Also, for those of you that do not know, as a result of October, late last school year, we had the opportunity to bring many of our students to the Drexel Center to see spare parts. As a result of some feedback that the Drexel Center got, which was that there are not a lot of opportunities around Columbus where people that speak other languages can see films, i.e. foreign films in Spanish. They're actually having a Latino films series next week in the 24th and 25th. Not only are they bringing some films from Argentina, from Spain, from other areas, and there's going to be subtitles, so if you'd like to come and see. They're also going to have some panelists from OSU talking about some of the hard-hitting issues that some of these films are going to be touching upon. So I do encourage those who have some free time. There's some family package, because that's also another thing that they heard, that there are some people that just cannot afford going to the movies for $30, or a family of 4. So there are some packages. So again, this is an opportunity that Columbus City Schools came in there. Our kids told them, hey, we would love to do this, but we don't have access. So I'm really proud of that partnership, and they're looking for more partnerships with Columbus City Schools. So.
Thank you, Ms. Reyes. Mr. Cole.
Thank you. I just wanted to make one final note. I had the opportunity to attend the forum that was hosted at The Ohio State University by our esteemed mayor and council member Shannon Harden. I was grateful to attend that event. It was very well attended. It was a successful piece. I was glad that I saw community leaders like Brother King in the back, Leonard King, and a bunch of other folks that were represented there that were trying to inculcate the value of love, the value of decency, the value of personal honor and dignity, about manhood, into our young boys who represented our Columbus City School District. So we had Marion Franklin, South, West, Northland. I mean, there were any number of high schools present. So it was a wonderful experience. I was really glad to attend. I saw you there, Madam Director, and thank you again for this partnership. I look forward to moving this forward.
Thank you. Ms. Hudson?
Just a couple things, routine. The Audit and Accountability Committee will meet this Thursday at 3:30. And we will be discussing the Auditor of State's report that we referenced at our last board meeting. And Finance Appropriations is on the calendar for the 12th. I wrote down the state wrong. November 12th, I think, at 3:30. So those two things, in the spirit of sharing too, about 2 weeks ago, I attended a weekend training on audit committee service through the NACD, and I will say that I feel it, that we discussed, it wasn't quite as inspiring as Board Member Cole was describing it from the Long Beach conference, but I will say the separation of the compliance function and really making that robust, the continuing function on risk assessment that we've undertaken and really work on, and the collaboration through with internal audit, and having that collaborative function is being recognized as the best practice in all types of enterprises. And so it was just a good reminder of staying that course and being on track.
Excellent, thank you. Now, Ms. Gibbs.
Yes. Thank you. The Innovation and Reform Committee meeting will meet on Tuesday, November 10th. We are at Downtown High School from 6 to 7:30. And if you have any ideas, as you can hear, we are on a timeline to add ideas, and whether it's in governance, operations, or in academics, please visit our website, and you will have is our button working, Dr. Stanford? We have yep, we're working on a button for you to submit it, but just shoot us an email if you have any ideas on innovation and reform. And lastly, a big shout out and thank you to all of the staff who are organizing these amazing homecomings. And so my high school did not have a homecoming football game, nor a homecoming dance, but from the Facebook photos, they're having an amazing time. And I know staff, you don't get paid any extra to decorate a gym to look like the Academy Awards, but from the games to the parents to the halftime presentations, you're putting in 150%, and the kids look gorgeous, and they're really enjoying it. We talk about all the things you have to do in high school, but I don't want us to forget the things that make high school fun. And homecoming dance and homecoming court and the games, even though you probably should win your homecoming game, but they're having a blast. So a big thank you to all the staff that volunteer to work on those activities that make memories of a lifetime.
All right, if there are no other comments, all right, I will now ask our Vice President to offer a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is recommended that the Board of Education recess into executive session per section 121.22 G1 Ohio Revised Code to consider the employment or compensation of public employees.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Any
Second.
discussion on that motion? Mr. Treasurer?
Mr. Ferretti?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Vice President Stewart?
Yes.
President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Ms. Hudson?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much, everyone. The board will now recess into an executive session. We will adjourn from that room without returning to these chambers. Have a good evening.